is a wrong-headed, misguided effort to eliminate movements like Al-Qaeda. It's not working and it won't work. But that certainly is not a complete and adequate explanation of why we are in Iraq and Afghanistan. I mean, we are in that part of the world because of oil. We are in that part of the world because Washington is insistent on its that it will demonstrate that America's will shall not be defied. You know, that we cannot afford to back down in Afghanistan, many people in Washington believe, because that would call into question American global leadership. I think American global leadership in many respects is an illusion, and it's a self-defeating illusion. But there are a variety of, if it were only one reason why we were fighting these wars, in a sense it might be easier to turn them off. But they are perceived to serve multiple interests.
You talk about what would be more effective in dealing with, for example, what happened on September 11th, is more a police action.
Right.
So what force deals with a police action? The CIA, the FBI, to some degree, special operations forces. I'm by no means trying to suggest that we would, throw flowers in the direction of Al-Qaeda and expect them to like us. We are engaged in what is a serious, again, not existential, struggle with these forces. But I think more broadly, again, the conversation shouldn't be simply about what do we do about the terrorists. I think the conversation has to be what do we do about the Islamic world. And I phrase it that way. It's kind of an inflammatory way of phrasing it because many people in Washington think we're supposed to do something about the Islamic world. That somehow either we have an obligation or certainly we have the ability to do something about the Islamic world. And I think that's absurd. It's nonsense. There are problems in the Islamic world. And the people who need to address those problems in the first instance are the people in the Islamic world. I mean, I have written, let Islam be Islam. Let the people of the Islamic world find their own way to reconcile religious belief with the demands of modernity. That's what we in the West have struggled to do and have done it with some success, albeit incomplete success. We owe it to the people of the Islamic world to allow them to do the same thing. What's our role? Our role, I think, is to demonstrate that liberal values can be compatible with religious belief. And how do we do that? Well, we do that by keeping faith with liberal values here at home and providing an example that may, in a very small way, be useful for people who live in other parts of the world. We're talking to Andrew Bacevich. His book is Washington Rules, America's Path to Permanent War. You were in Vietnam. I wanted to talk about what many are calling the equivalent of the Pentagon Papers. It's WikiLeaks, the release of some 91,000 classified military documents relating to the war in Afghanistan by the whistleblower website WikiLeaks. It remains a major concern of the Pentagon. This is Admiral Mike Mullen on NBC's Meet the Press Sunday.
The leaks themselves don't look clearly at the war that we're in. There is an ability to put this kind of information together in the world that we're living in, and the potential for costing us lives, I think, is significant. I said when it first occurred, I was appalled. I remain appalled, and that the potential for the loss of lives of American soldiers or coalition soldiers or Afghan citizens is clearly there.
And this is Defense Secretary Robert Gates on ABC's This Week.
My attitude on this is that there are two areas of culpability. One is legal culpability, and that's up to the Justice Department and others. That's not my arena. But there's also a moral culpability, and that's where I think the verdict is guilty on WikiLeaks. They have put this out without any regard whatsoever for the consequences.
Professor Andrew Bacevich, your response?
Well, I mean, there are competing imperatives here. I mean, in many respects, I think I'm a First Amendment, I don't know, radical is the correct term, but I mean, the government lies to us, the government conceals, and anything that can help to reveal information to the public that is of relevance to our understanding of ongoing affairs, that information, people who release it, I think, in some senses, are serving the public interest. The other issue, though, is we want to have, I mean, if we're going to have a military, we need to have a military in which there is good order and discipline. And we want to have a military in which civilian authorities are the ones who make decisions. In that regard, having a PFC who's leaking 90,000 classified documents, I do think,
in fact, Manning is the one.
If he's the one, I do think is a reprehensible action. But it's also reprehensible when, in the summer of 2009, before President Obama had made his Afghanistan decision, that the McChrystal recommendation was leaked to the Washington Post, which effectively hijacked the debate over what the Obama administration should do about the Afghanistan war. And I don't remember Admiral Mullen or Secretary Gates or these other people deciding that they were going to go find out who leaked the McChrystal recommendations, because I believe that that is as reprehensible as this leak of the 90,000 documents. That was a direct assault on civilian control of the military. So if you're going to get upset about one, you ought to get upset about the other too.
But the amount of information that's coming out in these 90,000 documents, what Julian Assange calls the evidence of war crimes at every level. A few months ago, we released the document, the video from July 12, 2007, of the U.S. military bombing New Baghdad that killed 2 Reuters employees in that one attack. And you're seeing document after document, KIA, KIA, civilian, civilian, civilian.
Well, first of all, war is ugly. War is messy. You know, the notion that in an age of high technology, those aspects of war are swept aside is simply not the case. I myself I didn't read the 90,000 documents. I read the press reports of the documents. I didn't learn anything. I mean, yes, of course we are killing civilians. And yes, of course, the killing of civilians in Afghanistan, even setting aside moral considerations, which I don't think should be set aside, the killing of civilians in Afghanistan flies in the face of our supposed claim that we're there to, you know, win the hearts and minds of the people. I'm simply saying that that didn't come as news to me. There wasn't a lot of news in the leaks in terms of at least changing my own sense of the nature of this conflict and how it was going.
But war is made up of many different actions. And, for example, we know, for example, Vietnam, My Lai was extremely significant, and there may have been many of them. But to know it, well, helps to end the war, because people, when they hear about particular cases and names and places, that's what makes people respond.
Well, that's a fair comment, although, you know, we are about, what, a week into this story, and we'll see how it unfolds. My own sense is that it's the WikiLeaks story is not likely to have the same legs that My Lai did, but we'll see.
Washington rules, America's path to permanent war. What was your greatest revelation, do you think, or what were you most surprised by in doing your research as you pulled this book together?
I think it was the way that people devoted to the Washington rules in the wake of Vietnam exerted themselves very effectively to ensure that the Vietnam experience would not matter. I mean, again, you mentioned I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I tend to probably to put more emphasis on Vietnam in a sense than it deserves in terms of my own worldview. But as we sit here in 2010 and reflect on the Vietnam War, what becomes increasingly apparent to me is that its policy significance turned out to be actually trivial. I mean, within 5 years after the fall of Saigon, we've elected Ronald Reagan. Within 15 years after the end of after the fall of Saigon, we are intervening in the first Iraq War. And it is astonishing to me in retrospect how little this event, the Vietnam War, which tore the country apart and seemed to discredit the Washington rules, seemed to discredit our approach to national security policy and globalism. What's astonishing is how little, how ephemeral its effect turned out to be.
Andrew Bacevich, I want to thank you for being with us. Professor of History and International Relations at Boston University, retired colonel, Vietnam War vet. His most recent book is coming out tomorrow. It's called Washington Rules, America's Path to Permanent War. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
This is Democracy Now! Back in a minute.